Thank you. Hello. Thank you for having us. We're very excited to be here to talk about Koha. Our topic today, we are going to talk about how we grow with Koha and support and lead change within the community. So here we go. So a little bit about us. I'll start first. My name is Kelly McElligott, and I am a library accounts coordinator at Bywater Solutions. Before I moved over more to the sales aspect of Bywater Solutions, I was an educator of Koha with Bywater for several years. So I would travel to libraries and teach them about Koha. I would spend a good amount of time talking about workflows and policies and really how to use Koha. But one of the biggest aspects of a library changing over to a new software is change, and managing change and working with the librarians and staff to evolve with that change. And no change is good. It can be scary, but it can be really fun and exciting. So we're here today to talk about how much Koha has changed in the time that I've been with it and even longer. And I'm really excited to be here. So thanks for having us. And my name is Jessie Zairo. I'm the Director of Library Sales and Outreach at Bywater Solutions. I also started out as a Koha educator many years ago. I came from a consortia, public and academic libraries. And I think part of my favorite piece of being part of the Koha community is just the outreach and helping people understand what an amazing community that they're a part of. And so as Kelly described, getting them excited and ready for the change, but also believing in what they're doing and having a voice to give back to the community about what it means to them. So our goal for today's presentation is really to discuss how you can affect a strong change management, whether you're migrating to Koha for the first time or you're just getting ready to deploy one of the new releases to your users within the system. We're going to talk about ways that you can be the leader. We'll give you some and really motivate your staff to get excited. So we're just going to take a moment just to look back at the Koha timeline. The Koha timeline. Koha began in 2000. Has anyone been working with Koha since 2000? Anybody? Oh, yay! Good. Bam. And then, we've kind of hit some highlights here. 2002, the first email to the Koha announced list, and IRC channel created. That's really impressive that we built that community so fast that the communication started really, really great. The first KohaCon in 2006 in Paris, France. Where was I for that? Seriously. And that's just the beginning. I'm pretty sure we've had one ever since, except for a little snafu in the 2020s. Then we go to 2008, and that was the 3.0 release. Now, who was here for that one? Yes. Oh, good. Lots more people. Yes. 2016, I started with Bywater in the very little after 2016, where Koha changed their release numbers. Who was here for that one? Yes, more of us. And then we're at the present day. Over 489 developers have pushed patches. How many have pushed patches in the room? Yes. Yay! Now, I can say Jessie and I actually started doing the upgrade kind of documentation for Bywater and for the community in the 1605, 1611. So I feel really good about that green bubble there in 2016. We're good. So, just a little motivational quote for a presentation. Y'all want to read it, but it's Socrates. I think that it's, we have change every day. So just remembering these words and taking that with you and moving on. Powerful.
So some of the most recent updates that we're going to talk about and what we've used to integrate within the presentation today is the inclusion of an ERM. And this is a massive, massive inclusion within the Koha system to expand for all types of libraries. So whether you support an academic or public or special library, you now have the flexibility to track your electronic resources. So if you were using the serials module for print or just tracking it within the items, you can now have a more detailed aspect. And of course, after this presentation, we'll see the new inclusion of usage statistics. So this is a huge expansion to bring into the community. We also got a beautiful UX update in the 22.11 release, which was a huge change for people. How many people still go to the top and search for a title, and they're searching in the patron fields? I do it probably every day. And you know that we face that same change that we're showing to our users and helping them understand what some of these changes are. And then, of course, one of the biggest exciting updates for us is the CMS. And we thought this was a really powerful way that we can include documentation right within the Koha staff interface. So all of us can use the help module to jump right out to the manual. But now you can essentially create documentation with your own policies and procedures for your libraries right within the CMS. So if they have a question about when something gets returned or a replacement fee is assessed, all of that policy and information can be created and documented right within the Koha system itself.
And you know, Jessie, this is really one of the reasons we wanted to talk about changes. I mean, this is amazing in one release that we got all this really awesome stuff. So, and it's a lot of change. So that's really why we're going to talk today. So this is my slide, and we're here to talk about, you know, looking at the process and seeing what's going to work. What's going to work for my staff? And my staff may be separated by, you know, circulation or cataloging or technical services or IT or systems. What works for each group or individual? Or what works for me? How do I learn best? How do I evolve with the change? So that takes some, you know, that takes a moment to think about what is going to work. We're going to push this amazing new upgrade or getting a brand new system. What is the best way to approach this? And then really creating that, in essence, documentation. And, you know, we didn't even talk about really how we got together, you know, really. You know, we started back in, I want to say 2018, doing our Monday minutes. Everyone subscribes, so I'm not even going to ask for the raise of hands, right? It's going to be everybody. Because we found out that people that were watching our tutorial videos specifically, because we could look at the stats on the software on YouTube, were watching them for very short amounts of time. So we were trying to choose the right training methods. We were going to engage our users the best way we knew how. So we created those short, weekly video kind of podcasts to talk about one thing in Koha. So, you know, we're talking to you about what we've done and how you can also bring that back to your library. And I think it's also important, if you are already on Koha or your staff is already on Koha, is to support the further education, the further support of learning something new. Super exciting for an ERM to come into the system. You know, you may have a staff member doing it in an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheet. I mean, this would be amazing to say, guess what? We have a whole new system for you. And that's really going to promote their learning to be able to learn a new process and a new module. And then, of course, be the change. You know, it's about like being excited. Jessie and I get excited every day with our upgrades and our documentation, and just that really exciting moment to say we get to share something. So that's important. So I hope everyone's smiling inside. I don't see a lot of smiles, but I know people are smiling inside, right? So, you know, just a little quote from Ben Franklin. And I think this is important. This is how I think of things. And I hate to read the slide, but I'm going to. Tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn. Oh, this is me too, sorry. So, we talked about the process. So just some tips that we've taken away and we think that are really kind of fantastic, but whatever you want to do is great too. Keep it original. Like, I think of keeping it original as don't recreate the wheel. If somebody else has done something similar, create something else, because we're a community, so we can share each other's resources and documentation. I mean, if you're creating documentation in the Koha community, I hope you're like raising the roof. I hope you are like telling everybody you know, sending it to the Koha community listserv so we get it in our newsletter, because that's important. So if you're doing something original, share it, because then I don't have to do it, or, PTFS Europe doesn't have to do it, or, and leave. Keep it short. I think that that's how most of us in our technology day, we are instant gratification. Make it happen quick, quick, quick. Keep it relatable. So don't dig deep into the code if you don't need to. Like, just tell them how it is. Keep it relatable to what they do. And lastly, keep it fun. Make it fun.
Yeah, and I think that part is the most critical, because if you engage your users, they're going to have fun. Like giving them something they can interact with, getting them involved in it, bringing them on, having somebody lead it or teach it. That is like incredible to have them be a part of the process, which helps them learn and helps them spread the message back to the rest of the staff.
We were at Koha KohaCon last year, and a gentleman who is in Kansas does another kind of tutorial video for his staff, because he's part of a consortium. And at the very end of his, I think it's only like 3 minutes tutorial video, he puts on a different hat. Okay, so that's crazy. You have to get to the end to see what hat this gentleman has put on. So then you can all talk about it and say, did you see Michael's hat? So think about that. Like, just keep it fun, keep it super short, and make it memorable. Like, if I didn't get to the end of that, I'd be so sad I didn't know what hat he wore, so.
Another thing that we like to do is like bring guests on. So like having librarians join us or other staff members join us, and again, bringing it back to have them teach something or have them talk about what they've learned, because everyone's experience is a little bit different, and they can learn just a little bit from each other. So learning styles is very big. Everyone learns a little bit differently, whether they prefer a visual medium or they prefer reading step-by-step instructions, or they just want to get their hands in there and try to do something. It's important to address multiple learning styles when you're creating content or creating training for your users. We try to do a mixture of everything from videos, which will walk through certain aspects, whether they're short tutorials, which might show them how a system preference can affect how something works in Koha, to showing them how to set up a certain feature, maybe with holds. So we find it very important to show them the hands-on that walks them through the process. We also create workflow documentation. So if you want to keep that documentation at the front line with staff or in technical services, this allows the user to have either a printout or an electronic copy that they can walk through those step-by-step instructions. Especially for new users or new staff members, sometimes they just like to have that piece of paper in hand that helps them walk through that process. We recently migrated a library system that has 800 staff members, and getting all of their frontline staff trained has been a massive undertaking. Like, we've traveled up to this location on 2 separate occasions to do hands-on experience with them, and they've created very specific workflows for circulation staff, for reference staff, and for cataloging and acquisitions. And this was crucial to helping them understand the new process within the Koha system. Hands-on learning is great. Even if you're new and you have access to a sandbox, The Koha Community Wiki has great resources on there that you can go in for sandboxes to test things. If you want to look at something on one of the newer releases before trying it on your system. This also lets staff get comfortable with change. So if something with fines and fees is changing and people are really unsure about how that process is going to work, this gives them the opportunity to go in and play with the system before using it. And then Q&A. This is really big for us, especially after we do our upgrade training. So generally, we'll train our users about a month to a month and a half before we roll out the release. We do live webinar training as well as on-demand training, so people can go out and watch tutorial videos, and just giving them the opportunity to come back and ask questions. Not only can they ask questions with us, but also other staff members can talk to each other about how they're going to roll something out or if they're going to turn a system preference on. And that has been really, really beneficial for the librarians to talk to each other and share those ideas.
And you can go back to just new libraries migrating, the opportunity to get in hands-on and then have a Q&A prior to going live, just having those opportunities.
And these are some of the programs that we use to produce our content. We'd love to hear what other programs you might use. We host most of our videos on YouTube, so they're accessible to anyone within the community. We use Canva to create our documentation or materials for handouts. Tango is like a screen capture that you can use to include both step-by-step instructions and videos. And then Screencastify is another free resource that we use that can create and grab short little videos right within the system. So if it's just a 2-minute video where you're showing somebody what the effect of a change will have, this is a great way that you can highlight right from your browser.
And we're sorry, we were supposed to look these up to know if they were accessible in all the countries, so I apologize if they're not. And I want to talk about all the other resources that we have at our fingertips in the Koha community as community members. We have the manual, updated twice a year. Shout out to the documentation team, whoever's here. Caroline's here. Yes. That truly is vitally important to every user. I click the help button multiple times a day, so it's fantastic, so thank you. The Koha newsletter that comes out once a month that gives resources to all the documentation that's been created in the community. So remember, if you're not on that, please go onto the Koha community website and sign up for the newsletter. Jessie mentioned the sandboxes. So on the Koha wiki, there are several vendors that have sandboxes that are available to use at any moment in time. And generally they're on the most newest release, which is great for people that want to just test things out. And then in addition to that powerhouse of Koha things, there are other community resources, tutorial videos. I know PTFS Europe's created some. Koha US has some and has nice PDF documents. So if you haven't gone over to their website, they have a lot of great snapshots, that PDF that you can have. And then I guess I put Monday Minutes on here for a reason, right? Because we also create some stuff, maybe every Monday. So these are just a few, and please, again, we're here to engage you. If you have any thoughts, if you want to shout it out now or leave it at the end, if I'm missing something or you're like, oh, I just, I created something and you didn't put it on there, Kelly, please, please, please.
So now we're going to talk about a little how we rolled out training for some of the newest features that we saw in Koha. So in 2211, Koha introduced an ERM. How many of you were using Coral before or have used Coral in the past? Okay, so we have some of our library partners that we support that were using Quirl. So they were familiar with the aspects of creating resources, tracking subscriptions, being able to view license information within the system.
I'm sorry.
So within this new module, now they have the opportunity to have everything in one location. And that's really big because now instead of having to go out to 2 separate platforms and having to train their staff on 2 separate platforms to use, all of these resources will be available in one location. So we just did quick snapshots to say like how we rolled out some of our training. So within the current release, we have access to agreements, licensing, and e-holdings. And with e-holdings, you do have the opportunity to connect an API to EBSCO. So this was critical for us to work with our libraries to set that information up, to understand how they can create local titles and packages within the system, and then also be able to create subscriptions and view license subscriptions within the system. So when we were creating our documentation, we made sure to include step-by-step instructions, not only to set it up, so they have flexibility within their authorized values, but also how they can bring these titles in, giving them relevant examples that we know both public libraries have and academic libraries have, so they can see how to set that information up. And again, in our next presentation, you'll see a little bit more that's coming about usage statistics.
Stick around, we're in Hall 1.
So within, again, the ERM, we have agreements, licensing, and e-holdings. Usage statistics is coming, and then that'll just continue to expand. So this gives Koha a very robust expansion into the electronic resources as more and more people are taking away from print serials and moving towards a more electronic database and subscription-based services. Now they can track that information on the back end.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the staff refresh. I love it, but I, like Jessie, get confused sometimes where things live now. So it's an amazing look to what, somebody who started with Koha in 2000, even to the 3 version, just a nice update, a nice clean look to our staff interface. So I want to say thank you to everyone who commented or worked on this because it's fantastic. But let's take a look back at 3.2. Here we go. I mean, where are we now? This is insane. I found some old tutorial videos done by Bywater that are no longer available to be viewed. But this is, everyone should just be like, wow, we've come a long way. We've come a long way, babe, or something. I don't know. That's like a line from something. And then one more. Look at that bibliographic. Come on. This is amazing. This is 3.2. I can say that when I was hired, we were moving over to the 1605, and somebody looked at these videos and said, wow, we need to update these. So what do you think they're looking at the old videos now on the website? We need to update these. So what is new is great. But remember, we've come a long way. So as we think about this design and this look, anyone that's new to Koha, this is great. They don't have to worry about it. But it's the people that have been working in Koha for a little bit of time. When I go on site or talk to people about learning a new software, I compare it to, when we get a new transition from a PC to a Mac, or a Google phone to an Android, or an iPhone to, you have to figure out where things live. And what does that take? Time. You could be told once, where do I go for this? But then you have to continue to do it to remember where you're going. So we need to focus on a hands-on approach, giving the opportunity to play around as much as possible, and encourage patience when you're working with this new design. Encourage it. We are all super speedy at Koha, right? We're all like, we can do it, we can go, whoop, whoop. But this is going to take a pause. And I think that's really great, is to take a pause and reflect on, okay, where am I supposed to go? Cataloging. I mean, hello, this how many times?
Do you go to tools?
Do you go to tools for any batch modifications? I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
So again, it's just that we love it because now cataloging looks full and beautiful, you know, it's robust, but we forget, and it's okay. And it's just promoting that, like, change is good and we love it. And it's great. The search bar, super tricky. I'm always stuck on it. Again, that just hands-on approach, going back and forth. I've seen some amazing changes to some libraries, staff clients, where they've kind of played around with the color or underlined where people are, you know, making that experience a little bit more cohesive for your staff. And, you know, we're going to talk about this later, but feedback is good. Listening to the staff to say, well, I like it, but maybe a little change, something a little bit different to really accentuate where I am on the page. And then just that, having that accessibility. We talked about the sandboxes. If people have test sites, we have a sandbox. Lots of Koha members have a sandbox to be able to get in there and play around. So when they get that new look, they're not a deer in the headlights. They're like, oh, I remember this. Okay, I have to do this, and I can manipulate that. And that's truly giving back the confidence that they had on that Friday when they left work. You want them to walk in with a confidence on a Monday. Nobody wants a bad Monday. Nobody wants a bad Monday.
So a CMS. In 2211, we also saw an easy way to create content and add custom pages to both the staff interface and the OPAC. And we saw this as a huge win for our libraries and staff, as a way for them to curate their own content and be able to help staff navigate to some of that documentation that they've created within the system. This created an opportunity for you to document your policies and have them easily accessible to your users. I think about things like just in circulation alone, where we worry about the time it takes to like charge a replacement cost if something's lost. And if you're a new staff member, like knowing where to look for that information, or you're setting up a unique patron category and you don't know which realm they fall into, having a place for your staff members to go and be able to see that information is huge to sustain their learning. It also gives them a place for them to start. So you want to encourage your users to be able to go in and find that information and empower them. And I think for us, that really helps, like our users. If they want to start and try and find the answer first, they have a place to go, or of course they can come and ask a member of the community or another user.
I just thought of something. I had a library partner whose staff, a staff member could write a report, but they didn't have access to admin, so they didn't know authorized values. They didn't know the codes. So this would be a great place to have a little spreadsheet of the codes. Like in this opportunity, you're not going to do much with it, but like for people that are using report, I love it. Oh, yeah. So exciting. Okay. Doing. Okay.
So our light bulbs are always going off, like thinking, how can we make things different? If you can tell, Kelly and I are always like, have a lot of energy and are always looking for new ways to implement and teach new employees or new staff members during the process. You know, we spent the first part of our Koha career traveling throughout the US to work with our libraries and really getting them excited to learn these things. So making sure that the documentation that we've created includes, you know, really good step-by-step instructions and organization to avoid confusion when they're looking for something within the system. We still, I think, sometimes struggle about, like, with organization, like, where will people look first? You know, we might be talking about a third-party integration with an outside vendor, but maybe it only has to do with the creation of patrons. So where do you keep that documentation? Where does that documentation live? And we always want to make sure that our users can find that information quickly within the system. We've also found that checklists, which seems so basic in the concept, but have been really beneficial during the upgrade process and also during the implementation process with our users, being able to just identify what they need to have completed within the system. And then again, I feel like encourage is like one of our biggest words here today, like just continue to encourage positivity so they can essentially grow their skill set and learn new things with each release that comes.
Oh, so just for fun, just to try it out, I created a page. So this is in my staff interface. You can get there from the home button and it just said staff resources. I created this like little header in Canva. And then I have some links out to PDFs and areas of information for my staff. This is just one page. I mean, this is nothing really to what a lot of libraries can potentially do when they have the idea and the motivation and the realization that in one place I could give my staff everything they need. And this is just for the staff interface. Think about what we can do for the OPAC. Just having our staff directory on the OPAC, like beautiful, or advertising our friends at the library and having them have their own entire page on our OPAC. That's pretty fantastic. I love it. We can talk.
Yeah. We 100% encourage feedback all the time, because what you think you might be presenting to your users might not be everything they need. So encouraging that interaction or communication between each other is crucial. Like for our Monday Minutes, we always ask librarians to share information. Is there something that you want to see or something that you want us to talk about? We work with our staff members. If Nick tells us that something new is coming, we make sure to include that so people are aware of what this change and how it'll affect other workflows or changes within the system.
And also, everyone's library is different. So when something new comes out, they could be using it in a totally different way than another library is. So you have to kind of see the big picture in how does this work for a public, or how does this work for an academic, and how maybe an ERM is like, I'm a public library, I don't think I need that. But then you start to dig into it and go, this could really make a difference. I could do X, Y, Z. So remember, this is just not like this very, one-sided thing. Koha amazingly is built for all types of libraries. So we have about a zillion system preferences to turn things on and off. But remember, if you've turned it off 6 months ago, you can turn it back on when you realize there's a purpose to it. That's what I love.
And just constant communication, like keep the energy moving, keep the communication flowing out to your users, letting them know about new resources that are available. I always feel like I look in multiple locations. Having access to all the different Koha community users out there, we're routinely looking to see what other people have done. I know when the ERM first came out, we looked at everyone's documentation, Catalyst, PTFS, Biblib, everyone, just to kind of see like how people were talking about it. And that really helps, get the different types of styles and see how people are talking about it.
Exciting. Part of our presentation, as we move out of our little bit of change, part of our presentation is going back to getting involved in the Koha community, because once we start working with our staff and embracing that change and getting them super excited, what do you think they're going to do next? I've got something I'd love to see happen in Koha. Then they start to be that person that says, I want to do more, or I have something that I'd like to see, or I'd like to change in Koha. So here we go.
Oh, I just want to say, there's so many things we want to say. And I think the most important and valuable thing about this community is that everybody has a voice. Everyone can talk about what they want. They can give feedback. They can go in there. Even if they don't feel comfortable, they can talk to another individual and share that information. Like, how good does that make you feel? Like librarians, when they say, oh, this would be awesome if Koha could do this, or wouldn't it be cool if we could add this? And just being able to hear your voice and share that with other people, doesn't that make you just love all things?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does, Jessie.
So we encourage people all the time, like give feedback, get them to ask questions, and really feel as they're a part of the community. All voices are heard.
And then, encourage them to join the community, whether you do it with them or you do it on behalf of them, or they want to do it themselves. Join the conversation, have that conversation to even just go into Bugzilla. You found the bug that was already filed, make a comment. Like, there are so many feelings that come along with having that voice to say, I would like to see this. I mean, I always go back to the emojis on my Apple phone, for release after release, where we get new emojis. Wouldn't it be great if you got to pick an emoji? I mean, think about it. Like, I've got a great idea. We need an emoji for whatever. Anyways, so this is an opportunity to, and I see it a lot in when people are starting to use Koha. They're like, why do we have to do that? That's the exact moment you need to grab them and say, okay, why do we need to do that? How can we change? What should we do? And you can go through that process right then and say, let's file a bug. Let's see if somebody else is asking that question.
And be the change. Sometimes this can be the hardest. I often think back to a TED Talk that I saw once where this person was talking about being a leader. And it was a festival, a music festival, where a band was playing and nobody was dancing in the crowd yet. And one person walked out and started dancing by themselves for about maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And then one person came back out and started dancing with them. And after that second person came, all of the rest of the people came out and started dancing with them. And just from that one person to come and join the movement, everybody else started to come. And so I often think about that. Be that one person to help push that change forward. You can really make an impactful difference to the users.
Ooh, this is great.
Yeah.
Thank you. You did amazing. I love it. We do have time for questions. If anyone's got some. Come on. Yes. Oh.
Well, I suspect that it's not always that easy.
No.
You get customers that are really hesitant to change, and my question is, how do you handle that?
I think back to, do you remember when I think it was the basic editor, when things started to float in cataloging module? Do you remember that? When things were floating? People were not happy about that. So what we usually try to do is try to find the best, or like, how did that change help move something else forward? People get used to their set in ways. Like, okay, I always had to scroll to the bottom and hit save, but now, the save button floats at the top. So we try to think of ways that it's made things easier for them, which they don't always want to hear. But that's, I think, what we try to do is just like find how it could have made their life easier, and tell them that if they want to make a suggestion, they can make a suggestion that'll go back. But it's not always easy. This release with the UX change, longtime users were very
vocal and hesitant at the same time, right? And I think that's one of the most challenging parts about this completely is managing the change, or being that change maker, being that cheerleader for change. And sometimes that can fall on deaf ears. Like you could rah all day long, and they're like, I don't want to do that. And it's also about finding the person that does like it and being their best friend. Mm-hmm. And then you talk to them And that person can make a difference too, because they're in the tunnel with them. You know, they're being that person for you after you leave. You're welcome. Oh, we've got a question from Andrew. Sorry.
This is a bit of a difficult question, maybe. So it might be just one for us to talk about during the week.
Mm-hmm.
But do we think it's ever time to put the brakes on change? So I'm thinking about how scared some people are about AI, for example. And I'm thinking about my mum, who really struggles to access her banking now because things have just changed too much, and tech's moved too quickly for her. So do we think as a community we need to be responsive to not just bringing people along with change as in training and support, but actually thinking from a tech point of view, what's the pace, and should we be mindful of the pace?
I will say 2211 was a big, big, big change for people. That was a lot. We got a lot of feedback from people that they were just unsure of things that changed within the system. So it's hard for me to express, like.
Did anyone look at the new CERC matrix a few years back when it was being talked about changing the CERC rule matrix? That scared the living daylights out of me. Yeah. At that point, I thought we're moving too fast because I don't know how this works. But you can comment and you can talk about it in the community to the person that's working on it, and asking those questions and kind of pushing back to make sure everything is going to get done in that. You know, like, let's make sure it's great, not just put it out there. And I guess we go back to the community. That UX, if you look at how many comments were on that UX design bug, people were slowing down and saying, wait a second, what happens if I, go really big, or, I think at one point there were no words. There were just the symbols for check in and check out. And I was like, oh no. And I think that's the best part about open source, is you have a voice. Yeah. So make that voice loud and clear to say, or I guess I should ask this, Nick. Can you make a bug in discussion, or Katrin? Yeah, like you yourself can just say, I think this needs to be talked about. Slow it down. Is that okay?
I'd like Tomas, our current release manager, to answer that question.
Yeah, oh, that's right. I felt bad for Tomas. Yeah.
Speak. You should tell us. We are programmers. We don't know about libraries. We've learned a lot, but we don't know your workflows. We like to hear that. Like, we always welcome that. And big changes are problematic for us too, because our bugs get stuck. Our bugs get linked to major bugs. So yeah, we want to hear you early, and it requires you to be really involved in the process. We try to communicate with you through, for example, our roadmap, where we say what we want to do during the cycle. It doesn't always work well because people don't look at that too often. But I think users should be more involved than they are now.
Thanks, Tomas. Thank you. Any other questions? He's like, how am I going to get there?
Our boss just found the tool for creating own pages. Do you have an extensive video library so I can practice about it?
Yeah, everything that we create, videos all live on our YouTube channel, but then if you go to bywatersolutions.com, we have a Learn tab, and when you click on that, there's a link to Koha, and that has everything in there for documentation for new users, for every different module, and we want people in the community to use it, so if there's something that you don't see or you can't find, Kelly and I are here all week. We really want to talk to everyone and we want to hear your ideas, so please stop us and tell us during the week what you're doing also, and we'd be happy to sit down and show you some of it too.
What, in your experience, are the best ways to communicate when you want to communicate about people's needs and discuss about them? Because in the Finnish environment, we have a Slack, we have wiki pages, and we have a Jira, and we send a lot of email, and every way have the good points and bad points. And one thing about like participating in the more global discussion is that I'm a little bit intimidated about IRC channels and things like that I haven't used since my youthful years. So, so what would be your suggestion? What kind of platform would be the best?
Well, we find just with learning how people have different learning styles. Some people may prefer videos over blog posts, over step-by-step instructions. We also find that users have different ways of digesting information. So in essence, we try to hit as many different platforms as possible. So we have traditional emails that get sent out to our user lists. We have some people that just don't want to be on email lists anymore, and they prefer going to like Slack or IRC to find that information. So we make sure that our access to that information is shared on those like instant messaging platforms. And then we use social media a lot as an outlet to reach our users, because one thing we found that's been very difficult is when we work with libraries, sometimes there's maybe 5 people within the library that have access to our communication. But think about the 48 other people that work at that library and that are using Koha and don't have access to our email list. Social media has been really good for us to hit those mediums, so people can find us and share our videos and our educational resources, and that's been really, really huge for us, for them to be able to access it that way. So that way we've hit multiple targets, which takes some coordination, but just like learning styles, there's different communication styles.
No. Then we can bring this session to the end, and great thanks to the speakers.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
thank you.
you.